Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? You know, things like debt and not having enough money and wage slavery, they'll just kill you slowly. They really will. Isn't that a happy thought? You know, ever since I've had this channel, I don't know that I actually sat down and thought I had goals for the channel, but I always wanted it to be about things that I really cared about and, hopefully helpful for somebody and just to be authentic and real. And so I wanted to talk about debt, real debt and, what it's about and my experiences with it and, wage slavery and all that kind of stuff and where I'm at with all that right now, because maybe you'll be able to relate to it a little bit. And I'm certainly not going to tell you exactly how much debt I have, but I had periods of my life where I had absolutely no debt. I did go bankrupt once a long time ago during the dark period in my life. And I just was on this insurmountable amount of debt. And I really felt like I had no hope. And then for a long time, I had no debt because nobody would lend me any money anyway. So that was useful. But I found myself in a situation where I have debt again, and I'm not going to tell you how much, but it's not comfortable. Now, if you're expecting a video that's going to tell you how to get out of debt, this is not the video, but I can do it for you anyway, right now, and save you a lot of time and a lot of trouble. What you got to do is look at what you're spending, live way below your means, figure out what your minimum payments and all that kind of stuff are, and all the things that you owe. Pick a method. Either pick knocking out the one with the lowest or the highest interest rate first, or pick the method of knocking out the one with the lowest balance first. When you knock that one out, then take all that money you're going to put into that one, put it into the next one, etc., etc., etc. Sell as much stuff as you can, live a very austere lifestyle, and eventually you'll be out of debt. Okay, now you just saved yourself a ton of time. You don't have to watch those videos. And if you want to be super, super cool and edgy, you're right out of debt. I will be out of debt by such and such a date, and you sign your name. I state your name. You do that. And then so you just save so much time watching all these other videos. But anyhow, how the heck did I get into debt this time? Well, the first thing that happened was, I was, with my girlfriend Megan at the time, and she bought this house. And so when she became terminally ill, we did all the necessary paperwork. We kind of got a half in my name. We did everything legally. And when she finally passed, I, applied for a mortgage, got the mortgage. And, I'd been paying the mortgage for a long time anyway. And so now I've got this house. It's not a tremendous amount of debt. In fact, I owe far less on the house than it's actually worth, which is good. That's a great thing. However, there were other things that happened at that point. I did some retail therapy. Some of it is behind you. After she passed, and I, had all kinds of justifications like, what, dude, I've been wanting one of these things for a long, long time, and, if I wait until I can actually afford it, well, I'll be 82. And so, screw that. If Megan's death taught me anything, and I'm not saying this is a justification to getting yourself into a whole bunch of debt or doing incredibly crazy things, it's that at any time, something could happen and it's over. This is the one shot you get. And it would be tragic to just wait your entire life and say, well, I'm not going to do anything yet because it's not the right time. And then, well, it's too late now. The candle's burnt out, and it burnt out at a time that you weren't really expecting. And so, it taught me that lesson, which I think was a valuable lesson, that, life is happening, go do it now, whatever that, you do it is. But I did too much retail therapy. The one good thing about buying the music equipment is that it is a hobby that pays for itself in my case. I take very fastidious records, or keep very fastidious records. I write down everything I buy anyway because I'm a little bit nuts like that. So I know where my money is going and what money is coming in. And so I've actually been able to responsibly tick off. And yes, I'm still in the red. And I wish I'd taken records during all the years when I wasn't buying musical equipment and I was playing a bunch of gigs, because then I'd feel better about myself because I'd be far less in the red. I might even be in the black again. But, there's be a time when, I should be able to knock it out, another couple of years, maybe, something like that. But other expenses happen. It wasn't just this irresponsible buying a bunch of music equipment. Well, let's look at the irresponsible parts first. I did buy some RPGs. Maybe I bought, and I think I've been in debt now for the last few years, maybe 4, maybe something like that. Maybe 4.5, maybe 5. It was corresponded very closely with Megan's death. And now, of course, I've been with Susan for over 2.5 years now, but we each have our own houses. But let's see, I did buy some RPGs, not tremendous amount. I might have spent $1,400 on RPGs, something like that. I did go, maybe a little bit more. We did go to some concerts, and concerts have become incredibly expensive. I remember back in the day, and I'm aging myself, when God, I think I had these concert ticket stubs for like $8 and $9 and $12, $12.50, 15. We were like, man, they're ripping us off. And my friend Adam has this very interesting observation. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a little drink of this delicious Diet Coke here. My friend Adam's probably been to more concerts than anybody I know, and I've known Adam since high school days. He's a year older than I am. And he made this very important observation. He goes, as the time went on, the cost of the concert ticket and the cost of the t-shirt that you would buy at the concert were approximately the same, within maybe like 10% of each other, something like that. At some point, the cost of the concert tickets continued to escalate and the t-shirt, kind of lagged behind. And so you've got this thing now where like maybe I can go to a concert. What concert did I buy? Like some pretty expensive tickets to. I think I bought tickets to a concert that's coming up. I might have spent $200 per ticket. I got some good tickets. And the t-shirt's probably going to cost us 40 or 50 bucks. You know what I mean? So and that's about, it's about the ballpark. So concerts have gotten much, much more expensive. I would not give that back. There's something to be said for living life. This is the one life you got. And for a long time, I just wasn't living life, or I was living, just really, really a very aesthetic lifestyle, which was necessary for a while. But I was like, you know what, this is my one shot. There were all these concerts I wish I'd seen. I could have gone and seen Rush during that tour where they played moving pictures again, like the whole thing. Never going to get to have that happen again. You know what I mean? Let's see. What other really, terrible thing? I bought a lawnmower. I had an awful lot of medical and dental expenses. I did have a bunch of implants put in. I had some unforeseen medical expenses, nothing, incredibly major, but even small stuff now just costs a tremendous amount of money. And yes, I did make the decision to get dental implants rather than to get dentures or just do nothing at all. And right now, if I needed any kind of indication that I did the right thing, as I'm wearing this partial right now, because I'm getting an implant for this front tooth, which failed. The root canal and the cap failed, so I'm missing this front tooth, and so it is very much like a denture. And I'm wearing this for maybe like 6 or 7 months while the site heals and the bone graft heals. So I'm going to get the implant in, and they have to wait. And you know what? It is such a pain. I never want to go through anything like that again. And the other thing is, listen, I'm a human being. You're a human being. We are worth quality dental work and quality medical care. It's not just the Plutarchs that are worth that. It's normal people are worth that as well. And yeah, let me tell you something. Now you've got me on my soapbox. Years ago, I was in the hospital for pneumonia, and I had walking pneumonia, almost killed me. So I was like 30 years old. And it was like, really intense. I'm in this room with 2 doors and all this thing to prevent infection because I had no idea why I was so sick at the time. And I was there for 5 days, and I got a bill. For some reason, the hospital sent me a bill as well, and it was supposed to just go to my insurance company. They weren't billing me, but it was an itemized list of everything. And I forget how much it was at this time. It was 30 years ago. It's like something like $500,000 or maybe less. Maybe it was $100,000. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong because I'm older. But things like gauze were like, $500, and it was crazy. Anyhow, I'll stop bitching about the cost of medical care in the United States and all that kind of stuff. But you get the idea. So some of it was that. It was actually a good chunk of money. My cat got sick. She had diabetes. She got sick, had all kinds of tests to figure out what was wrong. Eventually, it's inoperable, incurable cancer. Okay, great. So thousands of dollars later, including the cost of having her cremated. I'm not resentful, but it's just kind of like that's what happened. And so once again, it's like another unforeseen expense. Utilities, pretty expensive. Heating the house, pretty expensive. You're probably, if you're watching this, you're probably an adult and used to like all kinds of expenses like that. Mortgage and all these things. Insurance, been like outstanding how much that's cost me. The insurance for my house is not escrowed, so I have to pay that. I should do something that I had this base on, but that's what you get. It's not. So for a long time, I was able to just pay the lump sum, and finally I got to the point, with just one income coming into the house, And my daughter pays a nominal amount of rent. It's really nominal. Um, all of a sudden, like, I was getting less and less able just to save up a chunk of money and throw it at that insurance. I pay insurance for the musical equipment, which used to be just a rider on my home insurance, until one day the insurance company notified me that they'd been scouring social media and then they mentioned that I was playing in one person's band. So they mentioned me. And because of that, I had to get a policy, and a commercial policy to, like, as if you're renting your, as if you're insuring your equipment for like a business, which essentially, this is. And so that's something like 8 or 9 times more expensive than the rider was. So hooray! So I have to pay that. I'm paying life insurance, but it's something like $2,000 a year for a very, I think it's like $200,000, and it's to cancel the house and all the debts I have. And to a certain extent, the amount I need to take out is because of some of the debt I have. So I'd probably be a little less. But it's for the benefit of my daughter, so she's doesn't get saddled if she ends up, if I die tomorrow, she'll have a place to live, all that kind of stuff, and won't have to worry about all those things. But it's a substantial amount of money, and once again, I've got these things where I'm making installment payments because I can't come up with the $2 or $3 grand, all at once to do that. And then what else? Oh yeah, food. Food has become this astronomical expense, and yes. Sometimes I eat out, and if I had my druthers, I would eat out every single day, probably Asian food of some sort, and I include Indian in that. But even just without that, the regular groceries, there's not a heck of a lot of difference now between eating out and eating, decently at home. So it's just been astronomical. I could probably save a bunch of money not, drinking anything that I had to buy in a bottle like this. I don't drink, don't do drugs, don't smoke. I can't imagine what it would cost if I was still doing all those things. Well, I'd probably be homeless if I was still drinking or doing drugs, but, even smoking, I saw the price of that. It's crazy. But, so various things have put me into debt as I realize I'm living with one income. And I'm at the point now where I'm paying off, say, all the musical instrument type stuff, but I'm not paying my total debt down, because of the magic of compound interest and all that sort of thing. And yes, I'm taking into account the interest on anything musical. And I bought people some gifts as well, but in terms of whether I'm in the red or the black, you get the idea. So this is just kind of one of those things that it's amazing how fast debt can start to crush you in that sense. Which is one of the reasons I'm looking around, well, how can I make more money? And, it got to the point where my gig income became very, very necessary in order to make ends meet. Yes, I'm paying off the debt on the musical instruments and all that sort of thing. But it was also that I needed, in order to make all the bills, I needed to have this secondary income, and it became very necessary to do that. So, and this is, kind of leads you into this whole concept of wage slavery, is the way the system is in general, and the way it's been, especially, I think it was the 80s where really all of a sudden the credit card boom became huge, or late 70s, something like that, where they started giving everybody tons and tons and tons of credit. We get ourselves into this situation, because we're encouraged to. And trust me, I'm not blaming anybody else for where I'm at, except the cost of living, and, the fact that I'm not making enough money doing what I'm doing now. But if you look around, it's like, man, just people are having a big problem in general. Things are not good economically. And by the way, the price of groceries is still the same. Just saying. But you get into this wage slavery because all of a sudden, could I go do something, really, really radical? Take this big leap. Yes, but it would mean leaving the security, the artificial security of, having a job that's just making ends meet. So, I backed myself into this position, or get back in this position of being a wage slave, because got to go to work for this job, make that much money because I've got to pay these debts. I've got to make sure that, I just make the minimum payments, or whatever it happens to be. And just so many people are in that bind. Yeah, that's another, I'm giving you something for wearing this space. I love this bass guitar, by the way. This thing is awesome. Nina makes wonderful instruments. I do not regret buying this. So there. But yeah, we get stuck in that like wage slavery mentality and mode, and then we're not quite sure what to do. Which is one of the reasons, I'm doing something like this with YouTube and seeing what can I do with this, where can I go, because I like doing this. Whether I made money making videos or not, I would still do it because this is a hoot. This is a lot of fun. I would still do music if I wasn't making any sort of money doing it. But we ought to be able to not work in jobs that we hate, And the job I'm working in now, I don't like it, but the culture has gotten even worse. Where after my boss got, fired, presumably maybe not for not watching us close enough, the overwhelming message is that we don't trust you and we're being micromanaged and what are you doing now and what are you doing now? And if there was any kind of signal that I'm in the wrong place, that's a huge signal. Because when you find yourself expending energy and thought, covering your ass and watching your back, those are blaring messages. Wrong place, buddy. But I'm stuck, right? You're stuck, right? Because I have to stay here. And listen, job can go away. Can I snap my fingers better? I just took a shower, so you know what I mean? It can just be gone in a heartbeat. So what do we do? What do I do? I'm doing what I can to get out of debt. And, if push came to shove, I could sell the house. The only thing I worry about is my daughter, my youngest daughter who lives with me, because she is my oldest daughter. I'm not scared for my oldest daughter. I don't worry about her. I worry about the world because she's a bit like a bulldozer, like her mom. So, anybody that's in her way, I pray for them. And when an atheist prays for you, that's a serious deal. And she's a great person. But my youngest daughter, she's a little bit more like me, and she's a little bit more, I worry about her and handling all the aspects of life. I'm very happy that I can provide a safe place for her to be here. And so I'm reluctant to, remove that. Otherwise, I could sell my house, cancel all my debts, move in with Susan, and, take some kind of like leap of faith and do something else and tell people, take this job and shove it and all that kind of stuff, and like really go gung-ho into all my creative endeavors. Can't do that. So I have to do things a little bit more carefully and logically. But, things like debt, it's amazing how fast they can pile up. It's amazing how fast you can get pushed into a corner financially. And it's, until I really did a deep dive and really like took this notebook out and went back over my expenditures over like say 4 years and when I started going to debt and how did this happen, I was feeling really bad. I was feeling extremely guilty. It's like, oh my God, I bought like frivolous things like this $10 or $12 t-shirt. Maybe it was $20. And, I bought some music equipment and I went to some concerts and I ate out, and I bought like, I bought name brand soda or name brand kefir at the grocery store, things like that. How dare I do these things? And while yes, that did contribute to a certain portion of my debt. That's undeniable. There's a whole bunch of other things that were just normal expenses that everybody right now is dealing with that pile on. And it was really kind of eye-opening to see how much of the debt I've gotten into, after Megan's death was based on that. It was really remarkable. I just had no idea how much of it was due to that. And, for a long time, like how we were just kind of barely making, treading water with the two of us. So pretty amazing. I feel better about myself, but a little bit more concerned about everybody else, the way things are in society and the way the average person is really suffering. Because we get told, well, just don't drink that latte. That's your problem. And, listen, I'm a Gen Xer. And so I've been more fortunate than, the next generations that are coming up, that are getting hammered with all that sort of stuff. I don't have school loans. Oh, yes, wait, I do. I do have some school loans from my youngest daughter. But I don't have the giant school loans that they're looking at, and all of a sudden the entry level type stuff, along with these huge, college loans. My daughter has college loans. That's one of the reasons that she's living here. She has, actually making some decent money. So hooray, not super decent, but decent enough that she's paying off stuff. But I'm concerned for her. I'm concerned for my grandchildren. I'm concerned for my friends. But it's one of those things where I decide, I'm gonna take the bull by the horns, and with the time I have left, I can't even believe I'm saying that. I'm 56. I'm going to be 57. I feel like I'm 30. And you realize all of a sudden when you're 40 and 50 that people that are 60 just aren't that old. They really aren't. Well, the time I have left, I was going to go for it. Go balls to the wall, and maybe hopefully a big chunk of it will be here, because actually YouTube can be a viable source of income and a way to develop a community where you have something that's of value that you can provide for them, all that kind of stuff. And as well as doing music and all that other kind of thing. So you get the idea. But I say screw it. I'm gonna go for it. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm helpless in my job. Are the cards stacked against me? Yeah. Do people with more privilege and better starting circumstances have a huge advantage? Yes. Persistence is a real thing. It really is. But at this point, screw that. I might as well have the mindset of going forward and saying, yeah, try again. And, that's the other thing about debt too, is we can get guilted so easily into, well, you know what, you got to scale back. You got to live within your means. And for a lot of people right now, within their means sucks. And there's that moment where you got to say, damn it, I'm worth a cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I'm worth going to a halfway decent restaurant. I'm worth buying a t-shirt or seeing a concert of a band I like, or buying that RPG that I think looks really neat and it's $50. Whatever it happens to be, I'm worth getting this bass guitar that I've been wanting. Where is it? The MTD. I'm worth getting one of those that I've been wanting for almost 30 years. Sometime before I die. I'm worth that. It's not just the 1% or the 0.01% or the 0.001% that's worth that. I am too. So are you. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. So yes, I did tell you how to get out of debt. So maybe there's some value in this video, but I hope there's some other value in this video. Hopefully, you can relate in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you don't feel as bad about yourself. Maybe it's a good idea to go and do a deep dive if you have some kind of records of what you've spent, and maybe start taking records. Find out where your money's going. You might find that you're spending way too much in some areas and you can do something about it. You might find that, it's just that you're not making enough money and you're living a normal life, and that all of a sudden living a normal life is a lot harder. I did make those videos, if you're still with me, a while ago, where I looked at the inflation rate, what inflation has actually done to purchasing power. I looked at my own life from 2002, which was my best year, so I figured I'd use that year, to now. And it's for every dollar I made then, I would have to make $1.75 in order to have the same purchasing power and the same lifestyle. And that goes for you too. And you know what? Most of us haven't had our salary increase by 75%. In that span of time. Nowhere even close. So the walls are kind of closing in. Also, we're getting boxed into these smaller and smaller lifestyles if we want to be financially, responsible, while these people at the top, well, it's all going there. So, while we can do everything we can to change that on a political level, the other option is, okay, well, maybe I don't want to be up where they are, but I don't want to be where I am either. So how can I get to a midpoint? You know what I mean? Without doing anything unethical, without stepping on anybody, but by taking a leap of faith, by having some guts and doing something about it. And scary? Yeah. But why not?